The house smelled like citrus that afternoon. Not the fresh kind, either. That artificial lemon scent that pretends something's clean when, really, something's just been covered up. Darla had just left. Again. No words. No glance. She grabbed her coat, her phone, and disappeared like she had for the last 26 days. I counted. I counted everything now. Steps from our bedroom to the front door, seconds she spent in front of the mirror, how many times she blinked when I entered the room. Anything to decode the silence. She hadn't said a word to me in nearly a month. Not after dinner. Not before bed. Not when I handed her her favorite tea with 2 sugars and a wedge of lemon, the way she likes it. Nothing. Just silence, worn like perfume. And I took it. God, I took it. Because maybe I deserved it. Maybe I snored too loud. Maybe I was dull. Maybe I forgot to ask her about that book club meeting she never really went to. But then the phone rang. It wasn't even my phone. It was the landline. The one that only telemarketers and old relatives use. I let it ring twice. On the third ring, I picked up, expecting to hear someone ask if I was interested in upgrading my car insurance. What I heard instead was breathing. Then a voice. She's lying to both of us. I froze. She said she was staying with a friend. That her husband couldn't know. But I saw your name on a prescription bottle. Curtis Langley, right? Silence. I'm sorry, the voice said. But I think your wife's been living 2 lives. I said nothing. Because I already knew. I just didn't want it to be real. And at that exact moment, like it was scripted, Darla walked back through the door. No hello. No question about who I was talking to. No guilt in her eyes. Just one sentence. You weren't supposed to pick up. And that's where everything began to fall apart. I didn't say a word when Darla stepped inside. I just stood there with the receiver still in my hand, dial tone humming like background noise in a horror film. She kicked off her boots like nothing had happened, like her phone hadn't just outed her in the most casual, gut-wrenching way possible. She pulled her hair out of its bun, tossed her scarf onto the hook she insisted we install last year, and glanced at me. Not startled, not scared, just mildly annoyed. You weren't supposed to pick up, she repeated. Then she turned her back and headed to the kitchen, as if we weren't seconds away from something nuclear. I followed her. My legs were stiff, slow, like my brain hadn't caught up with what just happened. I leaned against the doorway while she calmly opened the fridge and poured herself cranberry juice. No ice. She hated ice. I finally managed to speak. Who was she? Darla didn't flinch. She sipped her drink. Her lips were stained red, and I realized I couldn't tell if it was from the juice or lipstick. A mistake, she said flatly. One I already fixed. You've been seeing her? My voice cracked halfway through the question. I hated that. I sounded like a child discovering monsters were real. Darla put the glass down harder than necessary. It's over. But it happened. Her silence answered that. I felt something collapse inside me. Not like a building crashing down, but like a slow, hidden rot finally caving in. I thought I'd scream. I thought I'd cry. But all I could do was stand there and stare at this person I thought I knew. My wife. My Darla. The woman who once texted me poetry in the middle of boring work meetings and left notes in my shoes before I traveled. I've been sleeping in the same bed with you, I muttered, trying to fix something I didn't even know was broken. She looked at me then. Really looked. Her eyes were tired, maybe even guilty, but she didn't say sorry. She just said, you were never supposed to find out. It was cleaner that way. Cleaner. Like I was a stain to be scrubbed away. I felt something sharp rise in my throat, like bile or heartbreak, or both. So you just stopped talking to me? I asked. That was your solution? Her fingers tightened around the rim of the glass. I needed space to figure things out. Space isn't silence. Space isn't deception. And then she said the line that would haunt me for weeks. You stopped seeing me years ago, Curtis. I just finally returned the favor. That broke me. I wanted to lash out, throw something, scream until my lungs gave out. But instead, I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't take my coat. I just walked. The night was cold. The kind of cold that bites under your skin. I wandered around the block until I couldn't feel my fingers. And when I came back, expecting maybe she'd be gone, maybe she'd packed and left, I found her sitting on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, scrolling her phone like none of it had happened. Like I was invisible again. But this time, I had the number of the woman who called me. And I was ready to learn the full story Darla never planned to tell. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a minute. Darla stayed curled up on the couch with her phone lighting up her face, earbuds in, laughing quietly at something I couldn't hear. I watched her from the hallway like I was spying on a stranger in my own home. She looked younger somehow, lighter, as if the guilt had already worn off. Or maybe it was never there to begin with. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of the timeline. The art class, the secret Wednesdays and Saturdays, the late-night walks she claimed helped her clear her head. I remembered how she started dressing nicer just to go to the grocery store, how she switched to a new shampoo, how she took her phone into the bathroom and suddenly started locking the door. All the signs were there. I just didn't want to see them. And now that I had, I couldn't unsee them. The next morning, I waited until she left again, said nothing, didn't ask where she was going, just watched her go. And then I called the number from the day before. The woman answered on the second ring. Her name was Miranda. Her voice was gentler this time. "You okay?" "No," I said, "but I need to know everything." She hesitated, then told me. They met at an oil painting class in Montclair back in June. Darla was quiet, mysterious, said she was recently divorced and taking time to heal. She never wore a ring. She didn't talk about me. She showed up late to class, left early, sometimes with paint still wet on her hands. But Miranda said there was something magnetic about her. Everyone noticed it. The way she spoke in fragments. The way she listened like she was storing people in a box inside her head. Like she wanted to remember them in case she had to disappear again. She told me she wasn't ready for anything serious, Miranda said. But then we started seeing each other outside of class. She'd stay over. She cooked for me. I even met one of her co-workers once. He called her by a completely different last name. I swallowed hard. She told me she was getting rid of reminders of her past. Miranda continued. I didn't know that meant you. I asked when she last saw her. 3 days ago, she said. She said she needed time to process things. I thought she meant us. My hand was shaking when I hung up. Not from rage. From shame. I had become a background character in my own life. That night, I didn't say anything to Darla. I just watched her as she made her tea and sat in silence, scrolling. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask why lie? Why not just leave me if I was such an afterthought? But I couldn't. I just sat across from her at the table like a ghost with a heartbeat. And then she did something strange. She looked up at me, put her phone down, and said, "What do you want from me now, Curtis?" It was the first real sentence she'd spoken directly to me in weeks. I didn't answer, because I didn't know anymore. Was I supposed to fight for someone who had already built a whole new world without me? Or was I just too afraid to admit that I'd been replaced, and the replacement didn't even know she was the other woman? That night, I decided I was done waiting for her to speak. I was going to ask Miranda to meet me in person. Because if I couldn't get honesty from my wife, maybe I could find it from the stranger who unknowingly lived the version of Darla I hadn't seen in years. And deep down, I knew this story wasn't over. It was just starting to unravel. I told Miranda to meet me at a quiet cafe on 9th and Bell. It wasn't far from the library where I used to take Darla before we were married. Back when we'd spend hours browsing shelves, making dumb bets over which of us could find the weirdest book title. Those memories felt ancient now, like they belonged to someone else. Someone less pathetic. When I got to the cafe, Miranda was already sitting at a corner table, sipping something in a black mug. She didn't look like the kind of woman who stole wives. Not that I had a picture of what that would look like, but still. She had short auburn hair, tired eyes, a blue ring on her middle finger, and a canvas tote bag with an art supply store logo on the side. She didn't look dangerous. She looked disappointed. And not just in Darla, maybe in herself, too. "I wasn't sure you'd actually come," she said as I sat down. "I almost didn't," I admitted. "But I need to know what she told you. How much of it was made up?" She gave a soft laugh, the kind that held no joy. Probably more than I even realize. We talked for an hour, maybe more. I learned that Darla claimed she'd been married once, years ago, but said it ended after he cheated on her during a business trip to Toronto. I've never even been to Canada. She told Miranda she was living alone while trying to rebuild trust in people, and she had rules. No sleepovers 2 nights in a row, no photos, no tagging on social media. She said it was for healing. Miranda wasn't naive. She started suspecting things after a month, especially when Darla would vanish for days and resurface with a new excuse every time. Work retreat, visiting a sick cousin, helping a friend move. But the weird part, the part that made my stomach twist, was how Darla apparently spoke about me. She never said your name, Miranda told me. But once, when she was half asleep, she mumbled something like, "He'll forget me eventually. He always does." That hit me harder than I expected. Because I didn't forget her. Not ever. I remembered everything. The way she twisted her necklace when she was anxious. The freckles on her left shoulder. The recipe she stole from her grandmother and claimed as her own. I never forgot her. I just didn't realize she'd already erased me. As Miranda spoke, I realized she wasn't angry. She was hurt. Used. Lied to. Just like me. We sat there, two strangers, bound by the same woman who had built two versions of herself and fed us each a different one. Then Miranda said something that stopped me cold. "She's not just seeing me," she said quietly, like the words were poison in her mouth. "I followed her once, 2 weeks ago. She didn't see me. She met someone else. A guy." My heart thudded. "I think she's doing this to more than just us," she continued. I think she's collecting people. Stories. Lives. Like their hobbies." I leaned back in my chair, the noise of the cafe fading around me. I couldn't breathe for a second. I had spent a month begging for her attention, for a breadcrumb of kindness, while she was juggling a web of relationships like a magician who didn't care if the trick fell apart. And maybe that was the worst part. Not that she cheated, but that it meant so little to her. As we stood to leave, Miranda touched my arm. "You seem like someone who tries too hard to hold things together," she said. "Maybe it's time you let this one fall apart." I nodded. But inside, I knew I couldn't let it go just yet. Because Darla wasn't done hiding. And I wasn't done uncovering the woman who shared my bed, but belonged to no one. After that meeting with Miranda, I stopped trying to pretend our house was still a home. I no longer left notes on the counter or waited for Darla to sit beside me on the couch. I didn't ask how her day went. I didn't make her tea. I just watched her float through our apartment like a ghost who forgot she used to be alive. She still didn't know I had spoken to Miranda. Still thought I was oblivious, broken, maybe even too spineless to push back. Maybe she was right, until that Friday night. She said she was heading to an emergency staff meeting at 7:30 p.m. on a Friday, with no laptop, no bag, no coat. Just a short black dress I hadn't seen before, red lipstick, and perfume that smelled like oranges and smoke. I nodded, watched her leave. The moment the door clicked shut, I went into our bedroom. Not frantically, not like a man panicking, methodically. I opened every drawer, every closet. I wanted to know who this woman really was, because it was becoming painfully obvious I never did. At first, it was nothing. Clothes, receipts, makeup. Then I found the shoebox. Top shelf of the linen closet, behind a stack of old blankets we never used. My name was on the lid, in her handwriting. Inside were letters. Dozens of them. All addressed to me. None of them delivered. Some were dated as far back as last year. One from Christmas said, "You don't see me anymore. I bought the red dress hoping you'd notice. You didn't." Another from spring. "You touched my back like it was routine. Like I was a hallway light switch." Some were angry. Others were shattered. But they all had one thing in common. She wrote them instead of saying a word to me. And tucked between two of the letters was a photograph. It wasn't of us. It was her, with the man Miranda had mentioned. I recognized him. His name was Ben. He'd been at our New Year's party 3 years ago. Darla had introduced him as a friend from her yoga class. Apparently, he'd stuck around. In the photo, he was holding her waist, forehead against hers. She was laughing, eyes closed, unburdened. On the back of the photo, she'd written one word. Maybe. That one word shattered whatever illusion I had left. I sat on the floor for over an hour, letters scattered around me like autumn leaves. These weren't just private thoughts. They were blueprints. Evidence. Proof that she had been gone long before she ever left the room. I should have been angry. Furious, even. But I wasn't. I was numb. Hollowed out. Like someone had scooped the inside of me clean and left the shell behind. When Darla came home later, smelling of wine and someone else's cologne, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the box in front of me. She froze. Her eyes locked onto the letters, then flicked to me. "You went through my things. You were never going to tell me, were you?" She didn't answer. I held up one of the letters. "You wrote this 7 months ago. 7. And you kept it in a shoebox." Still, no response. So I asked the question that burned the most. Was I just a character in your sad little play? The forgettable husband? The punchline? Her face didn't change, but her voice did. It cracked. "I didn't know how to leave." "That's a lie." I said, standing. You left 100 times. You just never packed a bag. She reached for the box, but I closed the lid before she could. And then I said something I hadn't planned. I want you gone by Monday. Her face, confused, shaken, finally showed something real. Fear. Not of me, but of losing the safety net she never admitted to needing. I didn't think you'd actually. You didn't think I'd open the phone. Or the box. Or my eyes. But I did, Darla. I did. She didn't cry. Darla doesn't cry. But her bottom lip quivered like it wanted to. I left the room before she could say anything else. I didn't want her words. I wanted space. Real space. Not the kind she used as an excuse to vanish into other people's lives. I slept on the couch again that night. But I didn't cry. I just stared at the ceiling, wondering how many other boxes she had. And who else's name was on them. Saturday morning came like a bad habit. The sunlight didn't feel warm. It just exposed everything. Dusted the bookshelf she hadn't touched in weeks, lit up the dying basil plant by the window, revealed the smudges on the floor we used to clean together every Sunday. The kind of ordinary messes that stop feeling ordinary when the person who made them no longer feels like a person you know. I didn't sleep much, just drifted in and out, haunted by the thought that maybe I was the last to see her clearly. The last to love her for who she was, not who she pretended to be with everyone else. She didn't leave. Not yet. Instead, she made breakfast like it was any other weekend. Eggs, toast, coffee with almond milk. The same brand she always bought, even though she hated the taste and only used it for appearances when her clean-eating friends visited. I stayed silent. I had nothing to say. Not until she did. I read the letters again, she said, not looking up from her plate. I looked at her hands. Perfectly still. Not shaking. Not twitching like they used to when she was nervous. You mean the ones you never gave me? She nodded. They were never meant for you to read. But you signed my name on the box, I said. So at some point, you wanted me to. That's not why I did it. Then why? Silence. She pushed her eggs around her plate. I waited. I wanted her to suffer under the weight of her own confession, but instead, she surprised me. I didn't want to stop loving you. That's why I stayed. But I didn't know how to need you anymore without hating myself for it. That hit harder than I expected. She continued, I wasn't trying to replace you, Curtis. I was trying to find the parts of me I lost while you were watching TV with headphones on, while you were canceling date nights for spreadsheets, while you were loving me like I was furniture, comfortable, consistent, unnoticed. I wanted to scream, to throw every chair in the apartment out the window. But the worst part? A small, traitorous part of me understood what she meant. I had become lazy, passive, predictable, but I didn't cheat. I didn't build secret lives and spin stories and whisper lies into someone else's sheets. You could have told me, I said finally. You could have shouted, left, burned it all down. But you didn't. I know, she whispered. And that's on me. Her voice cracked for the first time in months. And I almost softened, until I remembered Miranda, and Ben, and the dozens of letters that weren't reflections. They were rehearsals, scripts, lines prepared in case she ever got caught. Who else, Darla? I asked. How many other people were there? Her face paled. I deserved to know. She looked up at me like a deer caught in the crosshairs. Just two. Just Miranda and Ben. That's it. I swear. I stared at her, and I wanted to believe her. But I couldn't, because something in her voice wasn't right. It was practiced, controlled, like she had said this exact line in the mirror a dozen times, prepping for the day the box got opened and the truth got too loud to bury. So I stood up. I'm not asking again. If you have anything else to say, now's the time. After today, there's no saving this. She stared at me, then blinked, and said nothing. So I walked away. Again. But this time, not out of weakness. This time, because I knew that the truth wasn't buried. It was waiting. And I was about to dig deeper than she ever thought I would. I didn't plan to go through her phone. But something about the way she answered that morning, about the forced sincerity in her voice when she said, just Miranda and Ben, wouldn't leave me alone. It sat in my chest like a growing weight. Like a warning. I gave her a chance. I gave her the last chance. And still, she chose to lie. Sunday afternoon, while she was in the shower, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at her phone on the nightstand. Face down, like it always was. She never left it anywhere unattended before. This was new. Was it a trap? Was she trying to provoke me? Maybe. I didn't care. My hands were sweating as I picked it up. No passcode. That surprised me. She must have turned it off recently. Maybe she thought I'd already given up. I hadn't. At first, it looked clean. No suspicious messages. Nothing with Miranda's name. Nothing with Ben's. But I knew Darla better than that. She didn't leave trails. She archived them, hid them in folders, changed contact names. And that's when I saw it. A conversation with Jesse. No last name. No photo. Just a lowercase j. The texts were spread over months. Some short. You free tonight? He's asleep. I'll come in 20. Others were longer. Far too long for just a friend. I hate how different it feels with you. Like I'm not pretending for once. With him, it's all habit. With you, it's real. And then the one that hit hardest. Sometimes I imagine what it would have been like if we'd met first. You're everything he's not. That one felt like a bullet. I scrolled faster. My throat tightened with every swipe. Until I reached one that made my entire body go cold. We have to be careful. Curtis knows Ben. And Miranda. He'll connect the dots if he ever figures out about you. I dropped the phone. Because I didn't know a Jesse. His full name was Jesse Hartwell. My coworker. My friend. A guy who came over for dinner last Thanksgiving and brought that awful beet salad Darla pretended to love. I remembered how she laughed too hard at his jokes. How she poured him more wine than anyone else at the table. How she hugged him a little longer than necessary when he left. I had thought I was being paranoid. Turns out I wasn't even being paranoid enough. I stood up so fast the blood drained from my head. The shower was still running. I could hear her humming, completely unaware that the walls were finally collapsing. I could see her through the frosted glass, arms raised, water running over the body she used to share with only me. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I walked out, took her phone with me, drove to the bluff behind my old high school, the one place where I could scream and no one would hear me. I sat in the car for over an hour, just staring at the screen, reading every message until my eyes burned. And in that hour, I realized something. Darla wasn't careless. She was meticulous. She didn't cheat by accident. She built it like a second life. Carefully. Intentionally. Like architecture. Like art. And Jesse wasn't a backup. He was the one she saved for last. The one she protected. I could have sent screenshots to his wife. I could have gone nuclear. But I didn't. Not yet. Because suddenly, I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a man with leverage. And Darla? Darla had no idea the storm that was about to hit her doorstep. I didn't go home that night. I parked the car near the lake just outside town and watched the water reflect the moonlight like it knew all my secrets. The phone buzzed a few times, Darla, of course. First just a missed call. Then a message, "Where are you?" Followed by another. "Curtis, we need to talk." I turned it off. She didn't get to set the pace anymore. That night, for the first time in what felt like years, I slept well. Not because I felt victorious. Not because I had some grand plan for revenge. But because I finally understood. I had spent so long clinging to the idea of her that I didn't notice she had let go of me a long time ago. The person I loved existed only in memory, in old photographs and laughter that no longer sounded like home. By morning, I had made a decision. When I returned, she was sitting at the kitchen table, still in her robe, mascara smudged from crying. The shoebox was in front of her. Letters open. Some crumpled. She had clearly been reading them again. Maybe trying to remember the woman she used to be, or trying to become someone else entirely. When she saw me, she stood up. "Please just let me explain." "I already know," I said softly. "Jesse, Miranda, Ben. All of it." She flinched at the name Jesse. Her voice cracked. "I didn't plan to fall for him." "You didn't fall," I said. "You jumped. You rehearsed the landing." That shut her up. But I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just sat down across from her and placed a manila envelope on the table. "What's this?" she asked. "Divorce papers," I said. "I already signed." Her lip trembled. "Curtis, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm done playing the background character in my own life." She reached for my hand, but I pulled it back gently. "I don't hate you," I added, "and I won't ruin your life. I just want out of it." Tears finally came. Not big, dramatic sobs, just quiet ones. Real ones. And I felt nothing but a strange, bittersweet relief. Like watching someone you used to love walk away safely, knowing the door behind them will finally close for good. I moved out that day. No dramatic speeches. No slamming doors. Just peace. 3 months later, I moved into a small apartment across town. Nothing fancy, but it had a big window and sunlight that actually felt warm again. I started therapy, got a dog, named him Milo. I even picked up painting, if you can believe it. Turns out I'm awful at it, but I like the mess. It feels honest. And then one afternoon, at a little bookstore downtown, I met someone. Her name was Caroline. She asked if she could sit at my table because every other seat was taken. We ended up talking for 2 hours straight. She laughed at my sarcasm. I liked the way she looked people in the eye when they spoke. She didn't remind me of Darla. And that was the best part. We're not rushing anything. There's no need to. I'm learning how to be present again. How to love without disappearing. How to be loved without vanishing into silence. Darla and I finalized the divorce quietly. No lawyers, no drama. She sent me one last letter. A real one this time. Handwritten. It ended with, "You were the only person who ever stayed. I just didn't know how to let you." I didn't respond. Because sometimes, closure isn't a conversation. It's a decision. And I chose peace. I chose me.